60s and 70s fashions displayed in Mad Men. Vintage fashion from popular TV is influencing how we dress today. Now, adding momentum to it is emergence as a trend. Local fashionistas such as Nhlanhla Nciza are pioneering vintage in their collections or their looks. Now, Stephan Welz Co will be hosting a vintage auction later this month where several rare items will be up for grabs. Joining me now to talk about the trend and the upcoming auction is Tanya Demby, a fashion expert at Stephan Welz Co. Tanya, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We do have this thing about vintage, about retro, but I don't think anybody's been able to clearly articulate what this love is for things that are nostalgic.
You know, I think it takes us back to memories of maybe our mothers or grandmothers getting dressed, you know, getting ready for a big night out. And, you know, it kind of warms your heart to be able to wear a handbag that maybe your mother wore or your grandmother wore to, you know, a show 30 years ago.
Is it, and here's the other thing, vintage today, is it the mimic look of the 70s, 80s, or is it actual pieces that come from that era?
So to define vintage, it would mean going 20 years back.
Okay.
And that's anything from, you know, the 1920s flapper dresses all the way to 80s disco outfits worn by Diana Ross, you know.
But there was good vintage and there's bad vintage, or is all
Absolutely.
vintage good?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
You should be looking for label, you know, the label, whether it's Chanel, Dior, that's really important. And the condition makes a huge difference. And the provenance, you know, where it came from, definitely adds in the value of vintage.
And would you treat it, and I don't know if this is a silly question, but would you treat your vintage clothing the same way you would treat art, for example? You know, people are very conscious of an art piece in home. They clean it a particular way. It's in a particular area of the house where, depending on what the requirements are, not a lot of sunlight. Would you treat it the same way, or is it just like, let me put it on a hanger in my, do I vacuum seal it?
You know, I think you've got two types of vintage buyers. The ones who buy it to wear with their everyday wardrobe.
Yeah.
And then I think there are, you know, very certain, you know, clients who will buy an Art Deco handbag and frame it and put it up on a wall, you know, and that's quite special. They won't ever go into it. They keep the contents in there, you know, the old tissues, the old Rennies, tablets. They keep it as it was and they frame it.
Okay, let's talk about your upcoming auction. Where have you sourced this collection from, and what are we going to expect?
So the pieces come from a whole host of private owners,
okay,
and they come to me with their fantastic stories. Take, for example, the brown Hermes handbag that we've got going on auction. That was bought in 1968 by a man who was trying to woo this woman. He bought it for her in Paris, and she actually didn't like it very much, so she just threw it at the back of her cupboard. And here you go, you've got a fantastic bag in immaculate condition.
You know, when I hear these kind of stories and you go back to 1968, we're talking about a pretty penny here, aren't we? It's not going to be cheap.
No, definitely not.
Give me a sense of what we're talking about, a bag like that. Obviously, you can't predict it. It'll go into auction. It can fetch triple the price. But
Absolutely.
What are you expecting to roughly kind of raise for that bag?
So our estimate for it is 70 to 90,000 rand.
For a bag?
For a bag. Whereas if you had to buy a brand new Hermes bag, firstly, you'd probably be on a waiting list for about 2 years to get this bag. And when you do finally get it, it's going to cost you at least 100,000 rand.
Talk to me about the bag that we've got on visual on the screen at the moment, the one you brought with this morning. It's a classic piece, isn't it?
Classic Hermes Kelly. This is the bag from Paris, 1968.
So that's going to be about 90,000 rand you're expecting to fetch?
We hope to fetch, and if not more.
Okay. That's insane. I wouldn't want to use it for anything else. How did this idea come about? Because we know Stephan Welz Co, they've always been involved in high-level auctions and stuff. But this is kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. I started off the vintage department in January.
Okay, so it's fresh.
Fresh, Very exciting, very new. We're still figuring things out, seeing what works and what people, are really pulled to. At the moment, I'm seeing a great interest in the luxury handbags, so from Chanel, Bally, Hermes, Louvre, that range. And then we're also looking at the Hermes scarves, the Chanel jackets, more easy items that people can quickly take and utilize in their everyday wardrobe.
What's the rare find in this auction? Something that you've come across, maybe it's been submitted and you went like, wow, I can't believe we've got access to this.
We actually came across a fantastic box with 2 top hats, and those came from the 1900s, and they're in immaculate condition, and they're crazy. I don't think anyone would wear them, but they are beautiful to display.
Okay, details? Is it open to anybody? Do you need invite?
Anyone and everyone can
Who's
come.
got purse? You need a purse.
You need a purse. So our auction is the 17th and 18th of November, and viewing starts next week. And you can come anytime through to the Stephan Welz offices and have a look at all the beautiful pieces that we have going on auction.
Okay. Well, it's in November. You can go through to the Stephan Welz Co office and go and check it out. That was Tanya Demby, a fashion design consultant with Stephan Welz Co, speaking to us about the big auction, vintage auction that is coming up there. And as you heard her say, you're going to need about 90,000 Rand or 150,000 Rand, depending on what is on offer. Okay, so it's pretty big in terms of auction experience. If you want more details, just Google it. Now, over the past 10 years, the city of Johannesburg has seen an influx of people who scavenge waste bins. The